Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Get ready for a revenge tale where family drama takes center stage. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Make my mom cry? I'll call you by multiple ex-wives' names. Some necessary backstory. I have a complicated relationship with my Uncle Jeff, who's older than my dad. When I was a kid, I thought of him as the stereotypical cool uncle, played guitar, rode a motorcycle, that kind of stuff. I always wanted to hang out with him. As I got older, I started noticing there was always some tension between him and my dad, but my dad assured me it was family drama from before I was born and not to worry about it. Whatever the drama, Jeff never let it affect his treatment of me, so he was still cool in my book. Now, Jeff may have been a cool uncle, but apparently he was very, very, very bad at being a husband. As of me writing this, he's had 5 ex-wives. There was no abuse or violence or anything. He was just an emotionally unavailable guy, and every subsequent wife got sick of his crap and left. This story's about wife number 5. I met her for the first time at a family brunch when I was probably 14 or 15. She had a very unusual name. Important for later, so let's call her Ophelia. Ophelia was very sweet to me all afternoon, no red flags, nothing. But after my parents and I returned home, I caught my mom sitting on her bed crying. My dad was worried, asking her what happened, and after eavesdropping for a bit, I caught snippets of how Ophelia was cold, rude, and nasty to my mom all afternoon. And it was only my mom that she did this to, at a table with about 8 other family members. My mom couldn't figure out why or what she'd done to make Ophelia treat her like that. As far as I could tell from my teenage vantage point, she'd done nothing wrong. Ophelia was apparently just an a-hole to her for no reason. Now my mom's tough as nails. She was born and grew up under a military dictatorship in a foreign country. Point being, she doesn't cry. So whatever it was, it must have been bad. I didn't know exactly what Ophelia said, but I know one thing. You make my mom cry? You're on my crap list. Later that year, Jeff and Ophelia came over for summer barbecue with a bunch of our neighbors. If you're wondering why we bothered inviting them after all that, my parents believe in forgiveness and staying close with family, even through difficulties. I, however, am a petty teenage bee at this point. I gave Jeff a welcome hug, and as I hugged Ophelia, I said loudly, "It's so good to see you again, Jane." Jane was Jeff's wife number 1. Ophelia looked shocked, but I guess she chalked it up to an accident or just dumb teenage memory because she just kind of took it in stride and reminded me of her unusual, impossible-to-forget name. I apologized, and the barbecue went on without another hitch. The next year, Mother's Day brunch with my grandma, my parents, Jeff, and Ophelia, I greet her again by calling her Hannah. You guessed it, wife number 2. Another summer barbecue that year, I called her Miranda, wife number 3. Unrelated, but Miranda was my favorite of his wives. Yes, I realize I'm making my uncle sound like Henry VIII. By this point, I don't know if Ophelia thought I had genuine memory issues, but it was so satisfying watching the way her face would go red and her lips would pinch every time I got her name wrong. I would smile every time like I made an honest mistake, which I'm sure pissed her off more. I never got around to calling her by wife number 4's name, Jenna, because whatever old family drama happened suddenly flared up again and Jeff and my dad stopped communicating altogether. There was some fallout from that over the years, like Jeff and Ophelia trying to trick my dementia-addled grandma into changing her will in their favor, which was my final straw with my uncle, but otherwise I haven't heard from them since. And if you're wondering if Ophelia managed to stick it out as wife number 5, you should know that I signed up for Ancestry to start making a family tree, and by pure happenstance, I found Jeff and Ophelia's divorce papers in the online records. Hear me out. I think Ophelia might have eventually come to the conclusion that you'd been trying to warn her. And our second story. Fighting back with a rude customer. I'm not a confrontational person, but I am more than happy to stand up for myself. I've been reading a lot of stories on here of people copping abuse and just taking it, so I figured I'd share a story that has a happy ending for the store. Working at a store that has a large online presence, we deal with a lot of customers asking us where parcels are in transit. We aren't the courier, so we aren't the people to reach out to if a parcel gets delayed, but customers do it anyway. Customers are more than capable of talking to the couriers themselves, but we still help because it's good customer service. This one customer, though, he's a huge pain. He watches tracking like a hawk and will call or email us the instant there's a delay, and he buys a lot of stuff. There's also a problem with every item he purchases, but that's another story. Last Sunday, he sent us 2 emails. We're closed weekend, so I didn't see them until Monday morning. The first email was a complaint about a non-issue regarding a previous purchase, so I politely told him it was a non-issue. His second email said his latest parcel is marked as delivered, but he didn't receive it, so he wants us to investigate. Last time this happened to him, his parcel was at the post office. I had no reason to believe it wasn't at the post office again, plus it was the middle of Christmas rush and I had 2 no-shows for staff, so I politely encouraged him to reach out to the courier himself because I didn't have the time to do it for him. He didn't like that. He replied to my email with, "Being busy is not an excuse. You've helped me before, you can help me again." All I could think was, being busy is not an excuse. What the F? I couldn't believe what I read. Before I had a chance to reply, though, he called. This is a brief transcript. "I don't appreciate being brushed off like that. You guys have helped in the past. There's no reason you can't do it again. Last time, your colleague managed to find my missing parcel. Actually, that was me, I remember. Don't interrupt me. It's very rude. As I was saying, refusing to help me is terrible customer service. Also, you never replied to my first email." Actually, I did. Don't effing interrupt me. Did no one teach you manners? I will interrupt you if you make up lies about me. I will not just roll over and let you speak to me this way. You are extremely rude. Let me speak to your boss. Sure. Then I hung up instantly. Then he called back. I knew it was him as we have caller IDs, so without even giving him a chance to talk, I pick up the phone, immediately say he's busy, then instantly hung up again. After that, I replied to his email. I told him that being busy is an excuse, that he has no idea how stressful Christmas is for a retail store, especially when employees don't turn up, and that if he ever spoke to me or anyone like that again, we wouldn't hesitate to terminate the phone call and block his credit cards, which meant he wouldn't be able to shop with us again. A Christmas miracle happened after that. He apologized. Not only that, he admitted he was wrong about me not replying to his first email. He accepted that it was indeed a non-issue that he shouldn't complain about. Then he contacted the courier himself, and they resolved his issue for him, without us holding his hand. Turns out a neighbor had his parcel. I understand being in a confrontation with an angry customer can be scary, and standing up for yourself is hard because it's your job to be polite. But the reality of the situation is it's usually a middle-aged person yelling at a young person, which is very intimidating. But I hope that people that read this get a little catharsis knowing that sometimes these people realize their mistakes and have the power to apologize. I hate people who argue with you by first making up false statements, then to build the rest of their argument on. You did well to nip that in the bud. And our last story. Neighbors built a bridge over a creek onto our property. When we first bought this property, about 10 acres of thick woods surrounded by a creek, I was so excited. The creek forms a natural barrier around our land, clearly marking our property line. We've spent months cutting trails and building paths along the creek and even set up a shooting range in a quiet, tucked-away spot. Then one day, while we were out exploring the trails, I stumbled upon something that made me mad. There, crossing the creek and landing smack dab on our property, was a newly completed bridge. It was brand new, sturdy planks and a deck leading from the neighbor's property right onto ours. We hadn't met these neighbors yet since their house is still under construction, but I had no idea they were planning to build anything, let alone a bridge that trespassed onto our land. At first I thought, who the hell builds a bridge onto someone else's property without asking? I mean, this isn't a small footpath, this is a whole damn bridge. The audacity was unreal. Not only had they gone ahead without any discussion, but their bridge leads right into the area near our shooting range. The thought of someone wandering into that part of our property, let alone kids, while we were out shooting was downright terrifying. So naturally, I was pissed. My first instinct was to grab a chainsaw and dismantle the thing myself, but I didn't want to start a war with these people before they'd even moved in. I had no idea if they were just clueless or trying to pull something shady. Instead, I decided to try being the reasonable neighbor. At least at first. I contacted them, or tried to. They were unreachable. No return calls, no responses to messages. It was as if they didn't care or were intentionally avoiding the confrontation. That's when I realized they probably thought they'd get away with it. I went ahead and put up a big, clear private property sign right where their bridge touched our land. A few days later, I see someone snooping around by the bridge. Sure enough, it's one of the contractors working on their house. I head over to ask him if he knows anything about the bridge. He gives me the runaround, saying it's not his business and that I'd need to talk to the owners. Cue more silence from the neighbors. Weeks went by, and now I'm dealing with constant anxiety every time I hear a chainsaw or hammer from their side of the creek. Finally, I decide enough is enough. I call up a lawyer to see what my options are. He advises me to send a formal cease and desist letter and start documenting everything. The kicker, he tells me that technically I could file a lawsuit for trespassing and damages. Well, that set the wheels in motion. I sent the letter, complete with all the survey paperwork showing that the bridge was on our land. I was ready for a fight now. If they weren't going to be reasonable, I wasn't going to roll over and let them take advantage. Update. The neighbors must have finally realized they couldn't just ignore the problem because I got a knock on my door. It was the wife from next door, and let's just say she wasn't happy. She tried to argue that the previous owner of their land had told them they could use the creek area, but I shut that down fast with the legal documents in hand. When she saw that I had a lawyer involved, she quickly changed her tune. Suddenly, they were eager to work something out. In the end, we reached a settlement where they agreed to tear down the bridge completely. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.